join me in Shalom. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharei, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech, Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech, Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech, Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzeidchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech, Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I want to welcome my dear friend and colleague, Cantor Zev Brooks. We're so happy to see you. I was warming up the crowd.
Good.
We are on page 14 or 15?
We'll begin on page 15.
Page 15.
Thank you. Let's sing the Chuna Manana together. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, l'Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, l'Adonai. Naria, litzor yishenu, migad mahavanav b'toda. Naria, litzor yishenu, b'smirot naria lo. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, l'Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena, l'Adonai. Join me at the bottom of the page. Arba'im shana kud bidar, va'omar am to'ei levavim, ve'im lo yadu derachai. Asher nishbati v'yabi, im yevon el menuchati. Let's continue Kabbalat Shabbat on page 16 with Psalm 96. Join me 4 lines from the bottom. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'dagel haaretz. Yiramayam, 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 umelah, Yiramayam, 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 umelah. Yalos adavol asher ba, asher varanu galat sehar, livnei Adonai kiva lishba dares, yishba tevel b'tzedek, v'amim be'emunato. Why don't we read together responsively on page 17, Psalm 97. Adonai is sovereign, let the world rejoice.
God's throne is founded on justice. Will God be clouded from view? Divine justice reveals God's presence.
God's lightning illumines the earth, fire consumes God's foes, mountains melt like wax before Adonai, the earth trembles.
The heavens proclaim God's righteousness. All people behold God's majesty.
Shame covers those who worship idols, those who take pride in revering images, which must themselves bow low before God.
Hearing of your judgments on high, Zion exalts, and the cities of Judah rejoice.
You are supreme over all the earth, highly exalted beyond all that is worshipped.
Those who love Adonai hate evil. God protects the faithful and saves them from the wicked.
Light is stored for the righteous, joy for the honorable.
Rejoice in Adonai. You are righteous. Lord, it's God's name.
2 lines from the bottom. Continue now on page 18 with the Psalm 98, and we're going to sing a song in the middle of the page, and it's basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 7 lines down. It goes like this. Okay, we go. Let's see, actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines down. Pitzchu, follow along. It's in the middle in the paragraph. Pitzchu v'ranenu, ranenu v'zameru, zamru Adonai bechinor. Pitzchu v'ranenu, ranenu v'zameru, zamru Adonai bechinor. Bechinor v'kozim rabachazot v'od v'goshavar. Hariul Adonai kol haaretz, v'chinor v'kozim rabachazot v'od v'goshavar. Hariul Adonai kol haaretz, pitzchu v'ranenu, ranenu v'zameru, zamru Adonai bechinor. Pitzchu v'ranenu, ranenu v'zameru, hariul Adonai kol haaretz. At the bottom, lifnei Adonai kiva lishbot haaretz, yishbot evel b'zedek, v'ami b'mei sharim.
Cantor Brooks, who wrote that? Did you write
That,
that?
yeah.
So beautiful. Will you teach it to me?
Oh, yeah, thank you. That's actually a melody I wrote for one of the concerts that you might have been performing at the synagogue years back.
Oh.
And I sang it, and we had a violinist accompany me with that. The tricky thing about that is you go from the verses we sing, we skip all the way up to a verse above the beginning, but it's there.
But I just want to say, there's like you said, Cantor Brooks and I have this joke because I know he's a composer, so every time I hear a song, I say to him, "Did you write that?" And although most of the time, actually no, but he always he's like so flattered. But this one he wrote is very special.
There you go, thank you. Let's continue on page 19 with something I didn't write, but we're all familiar with. Romamu. Romamu Adonai Eloheinu ve'zachavu le'argocho. Romamu Adonai Eloheinu ve'zachavu le'argocho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romamu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romamu. Romamu Adonai Eloheinu ve'zachavu le'argocho. Romamu Adonai Eloheinu ve'zachavu le'argocho. Now I invite you to rise on page 20 for Psalm 29, the ever ubiquitous Mizmor LeDavid. Mizmor LeDavid, Havul Adonai b'nei, Havul Adonai kavod, Havul Adonai kilot shema, Hishtachavul Adonai be'adran kodesh. Kol Adonai al hamayim, el hakavod yirim, Adonai hamayim rabim. Kol Adonai ba'goa, Kol Adonai be'adar, Kol Adonai shaver aradim, Vaishaver Adonai darshei havadon. Vayakidim kamo egel levanon, v'sirion kamo ven re'imim. Kol Adonai chazim la'avodesh, Kol Adonai Shem Adonai Melech Leolam Adonai Oleam Oidin Adonai Yevarech et Amo Shalom. Please be seated. We turn now to the Chadodi. We're going to do a melody sung very often here at the synagogue. It's kind of an oldie, but good. It goes like this. Lechadodi likrat gala b'nei Shabbat negabela. Lechadodi likrat gala b'nei Shabbat negabela. Shahamor v'zachor v'dibor echad. Hishmi'anu el ha'miuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad L'shem u'niferet ve'elitila L'chadoni l'krad gala P'nei Shabbat nekabela L'chadoni l'krad gala P'nei Shabbat nekabela Yikrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha Ki mekor habiracha Merosh migedeh nesucha Sof ma'aseh macha Shabbat echila Lecha doni Lecha doni lekrat gala P'nei Shabbat nekabela Lecha doni lekrat gala Shabbat nekab Mikdash melech melocha U'mitzei midoch avecha Rav lach shevet b'imech habacha V'yachamol alayich chemla Lecha doni Lecha doni lekrat gala P'nei Shabbat nekabela Lechadoni likrat gala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hina ari me'afar kumi, Livshi bigdei divardei chami, Hayad ben Yishai, Ben alachmi, Kurva nafshi ge'ala. Lechadoni likrat gala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela, Lechadoni likrat gala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hidoreri, Ki ba'orech u'mi'ori, Uri, Shira be'eri, Ki vornai alayich nigla, Lechadoni likrat gala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela, Lechadoni likrat gala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. We turn now to page 22. Lo, tevo shivelo, lo, tikal mimad, hidochari, umatemi ba, yechesu aniye, ami venivneta, hir, atila, lechadoni, likrat gala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. V'hayrim shisha, shoshayich baracha kugo, Mivalayich, asisalayich, elayich, kimsof chatat hagala, L'chadoni, likrat gala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. Yaminu smo, Tifrot Sivi and Adonai, Daritzi, Yadish, Ben Bartiv, Nismechav, Nagilah, L'chadoni, likrat gala, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. We rise and face the rear of the sanctuary to welcome the Sabbath Queen. Ohi v'shalom ateret bala, Gam besimcha u'v'tzola, Toch emunei Nikabela, Lech Chadari, Lechad Kala, B'nei Shabbat, Nikabela. Please be seated. We're going to turn now to page 23, Psalm 92, a song for Shabbat. Mizmor shili Yom HaShabbat tov lehodol Adonai ulezamer l'shimcha elyon ulezamer l'shimcha elyon Mizmor shili Yom HaShabbat Mizmor shili Yom HaShabbat tov lehodol Adonai ulezamer l'shimcha elyon lehagid b'boker chazecha v'b'natcha b'leilot Halei Asur v'halei Novel, Halei Higayon Bechinor, Mizmor Shili Yom HaShabbat, Hodol lehodol Adonai, Ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, Ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Let's join me in the last four lines of the Psalm, Tzadik HaTamar. Tzadik HaTamar, together in the Hebrew Psalm 93 on page 24. Adonai malach gegud lavesh Adonai oz hitazar, avtikon tevel baltimot,
on kisacha meaz meolam ata, nasu'una harot Adonai, nasu'una harot olam, yisu'una harot yam, Mikolot maim rabim, adiri mishbarei yam, adir bamarom Adonai, idotecha ne'emnu ma'od, vecha na'ava kodesh, Adonai liorech yamim.
Idotecha ne'emnu ma'od, vecha na'ava kodesh, Adonai liorech yamim. For those observing a yard sign, we're reciting the Mourner's Kaddish.
We are on the bottom of page 24, right? Okay. And for those of you who are joining us on our live stream, we invite you to rise, and we're standing with you. Want you to know that. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah v'alma divra kirute v'amlich malchute v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael Ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevarach le'olam olamei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha barichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata Da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. So you may be seated just briefly. I wanted to share some thoughts with you between Kabbalat Shabbat and Mariv. We're living in such a contrary moment in time where there's, at this time of year, it's generally a time of great celebration. The conclusion of certainly what we call the academic year is always there, and we have people are graduating and they're thinking about next phases of their lives. And I'm particularly aware of that this year because I have 2 graduates in my household. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Rabbi Marcia Tilchin, and I have a son who just graduated Cal State Fullerton, and a daughter who's finishing Orange County School of the Arts. And of course, you know, they both worked really hard, and it was a long road for both of them to get where they are, and it feels like a great blessing. And I know that I'm not the only parent who's experiencing that, and this is also a season for weddings and so many other things that happen. And yet, you know, there is so much pain in our midst, and each of us have to figure out, literally day to day, how to integrate the world and integrate our own world. And of course, everybody has their own personal challenges too. You know, it's not like life is perfect. I'm just saying to really sort of find the balance and what's our role in actually being able to move the needle in whatever direction we want it to go, so we feel that we're productive and purposeful, and at the same time, not wearing sackcloth and ashes every minute. I mean, if we allowed ourselves to grieve all of the challenges that we faced, just let's look at the last 2 months, nobody would be wearing clothes. We'd all be like, have ashes on our head and walking around with tears and fasting. And that's not what Judaism would want us to do, and that's not what, that's not going to be the healthiest way for us to approach what's going on. So what I want to do in this brief moment, and I hope that those of you who are watching with us on live stream will, you know, feel connected to this conversation. Last week in my pre-Shabbos announcements, I shared some thoughts on the crisis of gun violence and what it means and how we might be able to make a difference. That was my personal message to the readers from the Jewish Collaborative of Orange County. Today I received this from my beloved friend, Rabbi Jill Zimmerman, who now lives in the Bay Area. And I want to share that, and then I want to open this up for maybe a very short but possibly cathartic conversation. Dear friend, as I sit here writing to you, the scent of jasmine is wafting into my office window, and it sits here right alongside my broken heart. How in the world do we deal with 19 children's lives being cut down in a senseless act of violence? How is it possible that those of us in the United States of America tolerate the proliferation of guns while at the same time professing to be pro-life? I believe in prayer, says Jill. However, prayer alone is not enough. As my colleague, this is Jill's colleague, Mark Asher Goodman, recently wrote on Twitter, in Judaism, if you say a prayer over something and then fail to do the requisite act that follows, like saying a blessing over bread but not eating it, it's a bracha levatala, a wasted blessing, a canceled blessing, which is actually in and of itself a sinful act. If you pray for victims of gun violence but do nothing, that's a sinful act. My own life experience has taught me that by working together, we can change the world. We moved the needle on nuclear weapons back in the 80s. We stood up in large numbers when Congress was going to take away the Affordable Care Act. We campaigned and won the Freedom to Marry movement. Black Lives Matter movement, Me Too, the hashtag Me Too movement have changed this country forever. We can do this, writes Jill. Please believe that it's possible to change what is to a world that could be, to change what is to what could be. I don't have all the answers, but I have a few ideas. First of all, call your loved ones. And that particularly resonated with me because I'm one of the people that just assumes people know I'm thinking about them. But they don't, and I want to be better about that. Especially your teachers. This is such a hard time for teachers. even if just to say, I'm thinking of you today. Take some action. Donate to Moms Demand Action, Every Town for Gun Safety, or the Brady Center. And there's another one from the Newtown Families, Sandy Hook Promise, thank you. Plan to organize in your own community to elect people who will finally pass common sense gun legislation and outlaw these weapons of war. Number 3, weep. Weep. Pound pillows. Call friends to rant. Your feelings of weariness and anger are real. Take a nap or a break from social media if that's helpful for your soul. And then ground yourself with your feet in the soil or sand and breathe. Number 4, find a little bit of good. Pay attention to all that is good in your life. And that's where I began. Say blessings for each tree you see and each kindness you experience and each beautiful milestone that you celebrate as we are blessed with our lives. Go on a walk. Play with your pet or your children. Remember this too, right? And one of the things I want to say, if you don't know Rabbi Jill Zimmerman's work, and I know she's a friend of many of us in this room, she has a beautiful workbook called Grateful that's available at no cost on her website, Cultivating a Path with Heart. And if you're feeling weary or tapped out, check out her other work, another book she created called Renew. She says, dear friends, I hope you'll take care of your souls so that you can be revived in order to take action. I bless you now and always, Rabbi Jill. She said it better than I could, but it was so meaningful to me. So I just want to take a moment and open. We're here in community. That's why we gather in community, not for somebody to preach at you. And you know, we're finishing the book of Leviticus tomorrow, and that's a great milestone. That's always a cause for celebration. But I want to just ask if there's anybody who wants to share. I've been thinking a lot about you, David, this week, if I may say so. And if you feel comfortable maybe sharing some thoughts as a dedicated teacher.
You know, as a teacher, you know, these events that happen in Texas really affect us because you always hear, you know, the people say after this happens in their community, I see this in the news, I see it on the TV, but it could never happen in my community, but it happened in my community. So it can happen anywhere, it can happen everywhere.
Yeah,
and that's scary.
That's right. Exactly. And it's gotten to the point where I actually think, whether I walk into a McDonald's to get coffee, I actually think I may not come out. What? But because it could be a movie theater, it could be a concert. I mean, it's really so shocking. And the fact that we are in this sort of embroiled in this political standstill, it's almost impossible to understand. The founders of this country did not want that to happen. Like, all the bad things happened like that no one could have imagined. And it's feels like there's no way out. I will just remind you that June 7th is election day. So please fill out your ballots and do your homework. Figure out who you want to represent you. But thank you, David. It's true. It could happen anywhere. Anybody else just want to share a thought or a concern or a hope? This does not have to be a pity party. Chaya?
I read something interesting today by Yehuda Kurtzer discussing how important thoughts and prayers are when they come from spiritual leaders who can help guide us, and there's that place, and saying, politicians are supposed to take action, and that's their lane.
what Chaya was saying, for those of you who probably didn't hear on live stream, is that, you know, we rely on our religious leaders, our electeds, to actually make sure that we are guided and inspired and safe and held. And that's also one of the challenges we are confronting right now. And that's, it's very, very, very difficult. And politicians are not religious leaders, but we invite them to keep us, I mean, if nothing else, to keep this. Right. That's Rabbi Berman sharing that. Anyway, I hope that maybe over the course of dinner tonight, we'll be sharing Shabbat dinner together, we'll be able to support each other. And it's important to talk about as opposed to pretend that it's not happening. Because as David pointed out, it could be me tomorrow. And I know that. I know that. Now, yes. Yeah. Yes, Jim.
How can the world stand by and see this devastation that's taken place in Ukraine and really not do anything to stop it? I just don't understand. I mean, you got all of these countries that are supposedly going to prevent this type of thing from happening, and no one does anything.
Jim, first of all, so Jim is pointing out the fact that this country's a mess, and, you know, so is the former Soviet Union and Russia and the Ukraine, and I would say it's the root of the inertia, or what feels like not doing enough, comes from the same thing as the gun problem. Everybody's just really afraid of losing power, and the complicated political embroilments are just, it's almost as if we've sort of gotten ourselves in a traffic jam. It's impossible. Like, you know, if we were to really go in and have protected the Ukraine, what everyone said, and I'm not an expert in diplomacy or statecraft, but that would have generated World War III, and then we'd all be gone. You know, that was one excuse. So what I'm saying is, I'm just saying we're all like this. But again, we are welcoming a lot of Ukrainians into this country. That's not saving the beautiful culture of that country. That's not right. I mean, we haven't, but we are doing the small acts of love and goodness that we can to be healing. And thank you for bringing that up. Yes, Anasia.
Real quick, I'm reading The Sabbath by Abraham Heschel, and one of the things that I found that really related to right now is the Sabbath, we're thought to give in like an extra soul,
Mm-hmm.
and really that it's about the world to come, and really just sitting in that moment, and I think that it's a beautiful opportunity that you just took right now for us to look at it from that lens of what can we do as human beings and as a part of the community to support each other, and to look at the world to come and how we can create that world to come from that lens.
So beautiful, and that's really what Jill was saying at the end. She said, it can be different. It can be that world to come, which actually was kind of like the world that most of us grew up in, but we didn't realize that it was going to go away. But beautifully said, thank you. So just a little song as we conclude, and Cantor Brooks will lead us in Mariv. El na rifana, oh please heal us now. Rifuat ha-nefesh, rifuat ha-guf, rifuat shalema, heal us now. May you all be protected in the week to come.
And now we continue our service with Mariv and the Baruch Hu, which is found on page 28. I invite you to rise. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam be seated. Let us recite responsibly on page 28 on the left, the bottom of the page. Light and darkness, night and sky, we marvel at the mystery of stars.
Moon and sky, sand and sea, we marvel at the mystery of sun.
Twilight, high noon, dusk, and dawn, though we are mortal, we are creation's crown.
Flesh and bone, steel and stone, we dwell in fragile temporary shelters.
Grant steadfast love, compassion, grace. Sustain us, O God, our origin is dust.
Majesty, mercy, love endure. We are but little lower than the angels.
Resplendent skies, sunset, sunrise, the grandeur of creation lifts our lives.
Evening darkness, morning dawn, renew our lives as you renew all time.
Baruch Adonai, Amari Gravim. Continue on page 29 together. Ahavat olam in Israel, Amcha Torah mitzvot chagim u'mishpatim odanu v'madita Agin Adonai Eloheinu v'shachveinu v'kumeinu Natzliach b'chukecha v'nizmach b'divrei toratecha u'b'mitzvotecha ve'olam va'ed Ki chayenu ve'yorech yameinu ve'yorech yameinu v'vahem negeh yomah v'layla V'yavadcha dasim imenu le'olamim Baruch Adonai Ohiv Amo Yisrael Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad V'yehohaveta Adonai Elohecha V'chol levavecha v'chol nafshecha v'chol me'onecha v'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi v'tzavecha hayom alevavecha v'shinadam levanecha v'ribahar tabam v'shivdecha b'beitecha v'lechtecha b'derech v'shofecha v'kumecha v'shadam lehoda yadecha v'yidadav ahol b'neinecha v'chedav v'dam avdudot b'techa v'visharecha Continue silently through the middle of page 31. Adonai Elohechem Emet. On page page 32, let us read the English. Let's go line by line. It's not written in a responsive way, but we can go line by line. We affirm the truth that Adonai alone is our God, that we are God's people, Israel.
God redeems us from the power of kings and delivers us from the hand of all tyrants, bringing judgment upon our oppressors and retribution upon all our mortal enemies, performing wonders beyond understanding and marvels beyond all reckoning.
God has maintained us among the living, not allowing our steps to falter, guided us to triumph over mighty foes, and exalted our strength over all our enemies, vindicating us with miracles before Pharaoh, with signs and wonders in the land of Egypt.
God smote in wrath Egypt's firstborn, brought Israel to lasting freedom, and led them through divided waters as their pursuers sank in the sea.
When God's children beheld the divine might, they sang in praise, gladly accepting God's sovereignty.
Moses and the people Israel joyfully sang this song to you.
Who is like you, Adonai, among all that is worshipped? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, working wonders?
As you divided the sea before Moses, your children beheld your sovereignty.
This is God, they proclaimed.
Adonai shall reign throughout all time.
And thus as it is written, Adonai has rescued Jacob. God redeemed him from those more powerful.
Praised are you, Adonai, Redeemer of the people Israel. Yisrael lechanu shira Moshe uvnei Yisrael lechanu rabav yamru chulam Limadonai mikamocha nedar bakodesh Nora tehilot osei feleh Yam lifnei Moshe Zeli Adonai yimloch leolam vaed
Baruch Adonai, Israel.
Amen. And this prayer we really need tonight, speaking of everything we talked about, the Hashkivenu, a nightly plea for peace and protection in safety.
Let us read the Hashkivenu on the left, all the way at the bottom, the last paragraph by Jules Harlow together. Creator of peace, compassionate God, guide us to a covenant of peace with all your creatures, birds and beasts, as well as all humanity, reflection of your image of compassion and peace. Give us strength to help sustain your promised covenant, abolishing blind strife and bloody warfare, so they will no longer devastate the earth, so discord will no longer tear us asunder. Then all that is savage and brutal will vanish. Then we shall fear evil no more. Guard our coming and our going, now toward waking, now toward sleep, always within your tranquil shelter. Beloved are you, sovereign of peace, whose embrace encompasses Jerusalem, the people Israel, and all humanity. For us, Aleinu, Sukkot, Sukkot. Yisrael v'Yerushalayim.
Amen.
I invite you to rise, page 34 for Vishamru. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat. L'Hasad et ha-Shabbat. L'Dorot amrit olam. Be'eni u'v'nei Yisrael oti. Le'olam kishesh et yamim. Asa Adonai et ha-shamayim et haaretz. Uvayom ha-shvi shavad vayinavad. Yidgada shemei rabba. Bi'alamad v'lach l'rudei v'amelech malchutei. V'chayechad v'yom echad. V'chayin echol beit Yisrael. Bagala, bagala, uvizmai kari v'imrel. Yeshmei Rabba mivorach, li'olam olam almaya. Yitbarach v'ishtabach, v'itbar v'itma v'itnasi v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalah. Shemei l'kudeshah. Le'ila miga bilchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiran bi'alma v'imrel.
Amen.
The Avit Amidas are recited in silence, beginning on page 35A or B, and to its conclusion on page 38.
And if it's more comfortable for you to use this as personal reflection time, please feel free to do so.
Please join me on the top of page 38. Let's sing Shalom Rav together. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam.
Shalom Rav tasim leolam.
Ki
Kitahu melech adon, lecho hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon, lecho hashalom. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha, tasim leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha, tasim leolam. V'tov beinecha livarech et Amcha Yisrael b'chol edu v'chol shah b'shlomecha. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam.
And now I invite you to rise on page 47 for the Vayichlu. Vayichlu hashamayim ve'haaretz chotzivam vayichal Elohim bayom hashvi melachto asher asa vayishavot bayom hashvi micha melachto asher asa vayivarech Elohim et yom hashvi vayigahad ejado kiva Shabbat micha melachto kiva Shabbat micha melachto asher bara asher bara Elohim lasot. Baruch, you may be seated. Atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Eloheinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Lirachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'elok Adonai, Gibor HaNorah, Elohei Chanei, Shamayim Ba'aretz, Magen Avod B'Divaro, Mechayim Edim B'Ma'amara, Magen Avod B'Divaro, Mechayim Edim B'Ma'amara, Elok Adonai, Shein Gamol, Shein Gamol, Avnei Le'amol, B'Yom Shabbat Kodsho, B'Yom Shabbat Kodsho, Shabbat Kodsho, Magen Avod B'Divaro, Mechayim Edim B'Ma'amara, Magen Avod B'Divaro, Mechayim Edim B'Ma'amara, Kivam B'Ratzah, Kivam Ratzah Laniach Lahem L'fanav Na'avod, L'fanav Na'avod B'Yirav Avachad V'Nodeh V'Yishma'u V'Nodeh V'Yishma'u V'Chol Yom David V'Nodeh B'Chol Yom David V'Yein HaBirachot V'Nodeh B'Chol Yom David V'Yein HaBirachot
Magen Avod B'Divaro, Mechayim Edim B'Ma'amaro, Magen Avod B'Divaro, Mechayim Edim B'Ma'amaro.
Elahod
Adonai Shalom, Mekadesh HaShabbat, Umevarech Shavit, Kedusha, Medusha Yoneg, Lemasaseh, Bereshit, Arashit, Magen Avod, Bidvaro, Mechayim Etim, B'Ma'amaro, Magen Avod, Bidvaro, Mechayim Etim, B'Ma'amaro. Hey!
Now on page 48, I'd like to introduce a melody. I've done this before, but very infrequently. It's kind of bluesy, as you know, something I enjoy doing. So follow along, and if you're in the mood, you can sing along or hum along, but hopefully you'll get into the spirit and the feeling. Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu, v'tzei v'imnuchatenu, Kadeshenu במצוותיך ותתחלקנו בתורתך סבנו בטובך ושמחנו בשבועתך קדשנו במצוותיך ותתחלקנו בתורתך סבנו
בטובך ושמחנו בישועתך אל ליבנו לעבדך
באמת והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה וברצון שבת קודשך קדשנו במצוותיך ותתחלקנו בתורתך סבנו במצוותיך ושמחנו בישועתך ותהי ליבנו לעבדך באמת והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו וינוח בך ישראל מקדשי שמך קדשנו במצוותיך ותתחלקנו בתורתך סבנו במצוותיך ושמחנו בישועתך ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
קדיש שלם.
Kaddish Shalem, I invite you to rise. Yikra v'ikra shemei rabba. Kama divrach v'deva mechon v'chaychon v'chon v'chaychon v'chaychon Yisrael. Bagla v'izman karev v'gimera.
Amen.
Amen. Yesh mei rabba mivarach. V'yadam l'amei umaya. Yitbarach. Yitbarach v'shtabach. Yitbarach v'naseh. V'nadar v'nadar shemei de'kodeshah. Ela bigo bircha da b'shvada, tulcha da b'nachmata, da b'ramah v'yimero.
Amen.
Kid gabel sodon lodon l'cho Yisrael, kad avon eshmaya v'yimero.
Amen.
V'yishtom rabba v'yishemaya v'chaim aleinu v'akol Yisrael v'yimero.
Amen.
Oseh shalom v'bramav, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, v'yal kol Yisrael, v'imru.
Amen.
And now I invite Rabbi Marcia Tilchin to lead us in the Kiddush.
Thank you. We are on page 49. Savri chaverai, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit, ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh, zecher letziat mitzrayim, kivanu v'charta v'yotanu kidashta mikohamim v'shabat kodshecha b'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. Thank you. We continue on page 51 with the Alpha. So, shall we count the Omer now, or wait maybe before Birkat Hamazon was a little darker out to count the Omer?
That's a good question. What I was going to do was do Kaddish Yatom and then count the Omer sort of in advance, because in the same way that, it's not everybody's around for Birkat Hamazon, not everyone, so it's okay to do it a little early.
Perfect, thank you.
So I invite those of you who are in mourning or observing a yard site to remain standing. The rest of you may be seated, or if you want to stand next to somebody who is would like some comfort from the community, please do so. I do want to make an announcement, which maybe most of you know, but William Erler, Barbara Erler's husband, lost his mother 2 days ago, and her funeral, Harriet's funeral, will be Sunday at Harbor Lawn at 2:30. And then after that service, people are going to come back here for a meal of comfort. And then we'll probably do mincha here at about, guessing, 4:30 or 5. So if you want to, share your condolences with William and Barbara, that would be lovely. I'm sure they'd appreciate it. Susan, are there any other announcements regarding that I'd want to share?
Just, you said the meeting at 6 o'clock?
I'm hoping it'll be a little earlier, actually.
I think it was the email we sent out, so if we've advertised it at 6 o'clock.
Okay, we'll find somebody to lead that if I can. Okay, very good. But please, those of you who are observing a yard site or in mourning, please join me. Yit Gadal, V'yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, V'alma Divra Kirute, V'amlich Malchute, V'chayechon V'yomechon, V'chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala V'zman Kariv, V'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach, Le'olam Olomei Almaya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yithadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei Dekudesha Barechu, La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'el kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'el kol Yisrael. Amen. So just a few announcements I want to share before we count the Omer. First of all, Eric Dangot will be with you tomorrow morning, and you'll be doing the blessing for the new month. I also want to welcome, we have some new faces to Temple Beth Emet this evening. I want to welcome my mother-in-law, Rosalie Spitzer, who's here for the both graduations, so it's a long visit because one was in May and one's in June, and we're very happy to have her. My beloved friend Miriam Horowitz, who grew up in this area but has never been to Temple Beth Emet, is here for the first time, and that's a big old Shehechianu. Miriam, we're so happy, and hopefully the first of many return visits because it's a very sweet community here. I also want to welcome my dear friends Anasia and Travis Heitzman, who are I've known Anasia for a long time. They recently married, and Anasia is helping me a little bit with the collaborative and also really doing a deeper dive, both of them, into experiential Judaism. We're so glad you're with us, and hopefully you'll come back a lot. And if you heard a gorgeous voice in the kahal, that was my friend Anasia. So I invite you to turn to page 221. And we are going to count the Omer. I think maybe it's not 221. 56, thank you. I was reading the wrong thing. 55 and 56. So I'll do the meditation. Hineni muchenet umezuman l'kayem mitzvat aseh shel sefirat haomer k'mo shekatuv b'Torah usfartem lachem mimocharat haShabbat Miyom heviachem et omer hatanufa, sheva shabbatot tamimot tihiyena, ad mimocharat haShabbat hashvi'it tisparu chamishim yom. I'm ready to fulfill the mitzvah of counting the Omer as it's ordained in the Torah. You shall count from the eve of the second day of Passover, when an Omer of grain is to be brought as an offering 7 complete weeks. The day after the 7th week of your counting will make 50 days. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sefirat haomer. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, instilling in us the holiness of mitzvot by commanding us to count the Omer. And we turn to page 59, and today rounds out week 6. Day 42, Hayom Shnaim Va'arba'im Yom Shehem Shisha Shavuot LaOmer. Today is 42 days that they are 6 full weeks of the Omer, which means that Shavuot is a week from that begins a week from tomorrow night. And I'm pleased to say that Temple Beth Emet is hosting Temple Ner Tamid of Downey. They're coming here, and there's going to be a beautiful learning session beginning at 7:45 with Rabbis Danny Melman and Eric Dangot, and maybe some surprise guests. And there will be food served. They're not expecting a big crowd, but it's not in the numbers, it's in the spirit. And we're very excited. And then, of course, Temple Beth Emet will be holding services on Sunday and on Monday.
Thank you, Rabbi Tilchin. Why don't we conclude together on page 53 with Yigdal. Yigdal Elohim chai v'yishtabach ni'imsa v'yehinei del metzilto.
Yachid keyichudo ne'lam v'gam ein sof li'achduto.
Elo d'mudagul v'yehinagul v'lo naruch elav gedul shato.
Kadmon l'chol davar asher nivra rishon v'yein reshit l'reshito. Notzar yoreg gedulato malchuto shefad nevuato netano el anshe segulato v'tiv arto. Israel gemoshe Shalom, Navi Umabit, et Emunato, Torah Demetnat, Tom Yamoel, Hayad Nevion, Eman Beito, Lo Yachalifael, Velo Yamir Dato, Leolamim, Zulato, Zofevio Dea, Sitarenu, Mabit Lasof Davar, Bekad Mato, Meli Chesed, Kemi Falo, Notain the Rasha Rak, Erishato, Yishlach Laketo Yamin, Meshichenu, Leaf Dot Machakekes, Yeshu Ato.
Meitim Yechayeel Birov Chasdo Baruch Adei Shem Dehilato.
Meitim Yechayeel Berov Chasto Baruch Adei Shem Tehilato.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.